Welcome to the webinar Self-Supported Touring in the Himalayas. In this three-part webinar, we'll talk about a nice presentation which I created 5 years ago, October 2015, after doing several long journeys through the Himalayas, road-based journeys either through biking, cycle touring, or ultra running. We'll have split it up in three parts. First, we'll talk about what exactly is self-supported touring versus regular travel, the challenges and benefits. Second part, we'll go over planning and routing in more detail. And finally, we'll talk about gears and schedule. Okay, so welcome to the first part where we're going to talk about the why, the how, and the what. We'll talk about different types of touring. You can go on motorized vehicles, on cycles, or you can simply run through the roads. How does touring compares to travel? What about lodging versus camping, cooking versus dabas, and several challenges that you have to be aware of as you go along self-supported journeys. You can find the HD videos of this webinar along with a lot of other webinars on my YouTube channel, on the blog ultrajourneys.org, and a 10-minute preview gets posted on Insta TV and Facebook. Okay, why do we go for long journeys into the mountains? If you ask that question to a larger audience, you'll get a lot of different answers. Going out to nature, to the mountains, means a lot of different things for different people. For me personally, it's all about endurance and challenge, about discovering, I would say, the boundaries of your physical and mental endurance. Also a lot about finding peace in very remote places, getting away from the daily stress, chaos, pollution in the cities where we live. It's all about recharging yourself mentally, recharging the soul, basically searching for inner peace. Travel is all about self-discovery, obviously, especially in self-supported journeys where you're going to challenge yourself much more than on a properly tourist type of journey. You're going to experience new locations, unseen beautiful places, natural beauty. You're going to meet a lot of people, interesting people. You'll discover the cultures. Going out again, solo versus a team. As you go out with a small team, there's a lot of team bonding and learnings related to that. Self-supported journey, one of the major benefits compared to a guided tour will be the complete freedom. And of course, for many people, part of life is the cuisine, the food, exotic food you're gonna find in those new places. Of course, one major wanna go to the mountains is about nature's beauty. Here you can see a picture taken during one of the mornings during a 12-day run through the Pangi Valley from Kashmir to Manali. You can see this is the month of May actually, when part of the vegetation is already orange and yellow, a bit dry in the summer, but at the same time the foggy clouds and the green valley, fertile valley, is so beautiful as you wake up and prepare for your day. In the nights then you see another different world in the mountains where there's less light pollution, where it's very dark, especially in valleys. You get a beautiful view on the Milky Way high above the snow-capped mountain ranges in the night. Of course, you get to meet a lot of different people and cultures. Here I took a couple of pictures from, again, that same Srinagar to Manali run, 500-kilometer run in 2015, where you get to meet even different races, you can say, as you move to different parts of the Himalayas. The touring options, so what is travel versus touring? So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about biking versus cycling versus running. A couple of important decisions are related to stay and food, obviously. Are you gonna go for lodging? Do you stay in rooms or lodges, or do you carry your own camping gears with you so you can pitch up anywhere at the end of the day? And then what about food? Will you find your food on the way, or will you carry it along with you and cook? So these are a couple of decisions we need to make, yes, no, as we plan for self-supported journeys on either by foot, by cycling or motorbiking. Traveling versus touring. So when we talk about normal tourist travels, you talk about buses and taxis, even backpacking is actually completely dependent on external transport. If you go for touring, of course, you have the main thing is to have your own means of transport. So that can be a bike, or running, or cycling. It's a complete difference to have your own vehicle in the sense that it gives you complete freedom, 360 degrees freedoms. You're indulged fully in your surroundings. As you look around you, you're not boxed up in a metal cage of a taxi or a bus. And you have a complete free timeline. Anywhere you want, you can halt, you can stop, take pictures, you can settle down for the night, you can take food. You're not basically bound by other people sharing the same transportation in a travel environment. Move it, move it. So in this presentation, I condense some 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 big journeys in the year 2000 all the way till 2015. Initially, I did a lot of bike trips there on the top left. Started my first trip to the Himalayas solo on my Enfield Lightning 535cc in the year 2000. I did another one in 2001, 2008, and 2011. Then started switching to cycling, fell in love with my mountain bike there at the bottom. Did a trip through Himachal and Sri Lanka. Later I would also go on a big tour through Vietnam. And then in the year 2015, finally, I fell in love with ultra running, never touched my motorcycle or mountain bike again, and simply started running, which gives me so much more freedom. Of course, it might not be the easiest way to start touring for people. One thing that I've learned is as you go simpler, as you go more minimalist from a vehicle to a bike to a cycle to a barefoot running, that you become much more indulged in your surroundings. One of the reasons probably is that you go lighter and that you go slower actually as you run or start cycling. So you have much more time to indulge in your surrounding, to take in the natural beauty around you. But I've seen that the experience definitely becomes much more intense as you move to a more minimalist way of transportation. Comparison of the different means here. So initially biking gives you, of course, is a little bit more accessible. Anyone can bike. You don't need much of a fitness level. You just need to be able to balance yourself on two wheels. You got a pretty good mileage of 150 to 250k, so you can do really long trips in 1 or 2 weeks. And doesn't matter uphill, downhill, it's not much of a problem. The bike is doing the work for you. You just have to carry the fuel. Of course, transporting this bike to the mountains, then mechanical issues, especially with the older bullets, and then the terrain, like off-roading, loose scree, rocks, downhill, can be a little bit tricky on the bike. If you then move to a cycle, it becomes lighter. You have less mechanical headaches because less can go wrong on a cycle than compared to a motorized bike. The mileage drops a little bit, of course, 50 to 100k per day, I would say. Cycle is lightweight, so you're not blocked by landslide. You can simply remove the luggage, the wheels, the frame, and walk across any type of terrain. Of course, luggage have to be a little bit more calculative. You cannot carry that much weight on a cycle, even though, I mean, you can carry quite a bit of weight without actually feeling much of the impact. Unless, of course, the terrain goes uphill, and if it really is off-road, then it's gonna be a much more bigger effort if you have to cycle on through streams and rocks. Fitness level, of course, comes into play here compared to a bike, especially cycling in the Himalayas. When you then take it to the next level of ultra running, your range becomes around 40 to 50k per day. So I say 40 plus here because as long as you stay on the roads, you can have a good mileage. Unless you go really to high altitude passes and really tough terrain, your mileage will drop to say 20 to 30k per day. On the roads, it's easy. You can carry less luggage because you can depend on the towns on the way for night stay and food. So you have to carry also less gears actually compared to a completely independent, self-sufficient alpine style hiker in the passes. Travel becomes easier. You don't have to carry a cycle or a bike with you to the mountains. So very simple, no mechanical issues, landslides, terrain, uphill, doesn't matter. A runner can easily go through any kind of terrain compared to a wheeled transport. Of course, distance is a bit less. Luggage becomes extremely important. You cannot really run with 5 kg on your back, and your fitness level and preparedness needs to be at a peak level. Lodging versus camping. So obviously, lodging means that you don't have to carry camping gears with you. Most of your weight from your luggage will come from your tent, sleeping bags, mats, and all that stuff for camping. But if you look at the experience, sitting in a room there on the top left corner, closed room, used by so many other people, dusty, a little smelly sometimes when it's in the wet season. Nothing compares to opening your tent and looking in the mountains there. The flexibility of carrying your own gears allows you to stay anywhere, wherever the sun sets down. Have a nice campfire, take a dip in the waterfall next to your campsite. So it's a much more, again, indulging and experience to carry your own camping gears with you. Cooking versus dabas, so that again has a big impact on the weight you carry, in the sense that cooking means you'll have to carry your ingredients, your food and gas, fuel, a stove, pots, utensils, so it becomes more weight, which is okay on a cycle, but while running I would not really recommend this. Again, as long as you stay on the roads, in the remote mountains even, you will always cross some villages every 15 to 20 kilometers where you will have some dabas that you have freshly cooked food, rather than spending more time on cooking yourself. Let's take a look at the challenges. The first part, at least. Challenges will be thrown at you in various ways. One is the terrain and the road conditions. Obviously, the elevation, the hills, the gradient, the higher altitudes. The luggage, of course, and the load that you carry with you. The weather has an important impact on yourself and your wheels, the rains, the climate, especially the temperature and the sun at those higher altitudes. Daylight is an important thing to plan. Mechanical issues with cycles and bikes. Injuries, especially while running or cycling, where you have to have good fitness level. Doing serious physical endurance for longer durations, in like 1 or 2 weeks, is a totally different story than running one marathon. And then the longer duration, obviously. Okay, so let's take a look at everyone individually. So road versus off-road versus sometimes you come across no road at all in the Himalayas, while you hike or bike through the streams, through the landslides. The effort and the progress is highly dependent on the kind of road surface. On a cycle, you can make amazing progress on a day. You can cover 100 kilometers with a kind of proper road. As the road comes worse, the runners become faster and the cycles and the bikers become slower, obviously. The terrain versus the incline, going on a nice highway with a very low incline. Typically, roads are pretty gradual, as heavy lorries have to get through that. It's much quicker than going on a hairpin dirt track, obviously, especially again on cycle. As a runner, it doesn't make that much difference, as on foot you can easily go through worse terrain and inclines. Load, of course, makes a big impact. As you go on self-supported journeys, you cannot have big suitcases with you, like you're traveling on buses and taxis and staying in hotels. You'll have to carry your luggage for 24 hours, except of course in the night. Even in the night, you'll have to put enough space in your tent to keep all your luggage. So the less you carry, the better typically. On a cycle, you can carry easily 7 kg and 2 panniers. Saddlebags, more than that is not really required. 7 kg is enough for one person. And you can even have like a runner carry even additional luggage required for the runner who cannot really carry that 7 kg on his back. Altitude makes a bigger impact. As you're going to go in the Himalayas, you will go through different types of altitudes. The lower Himalayas, you can say, is 1,500 to 2,000 meters. No issues there. Good oxygen, lower altitudes. Of course, as you go on lower altitudes, the sun will be more intense, the heat will be more intense. Climate becomes much more enjoyable above 2,000 meters in the upper Himalayas, where even running midday under the sun is quite enjoyable due to the higher altitude. At the same time, of course, the oxygen becomes less, which means that it's going to be tougher to go through tough terrain, run uphill with less oxygen. And then, of course, as you cross the passes along your route, that is going to be quite tough, both in terms of climb, but then also in terms of the altitude, where at 4,000 plus meters, the oxygen level really becomes very less, as well as the climate becomes quite extreme at these higher altitudes. Weather has a major impact. Weather typically tends to be more extreme at higher altitudes. Again, the weather is what's going to mess up your roads, going to cause landslides due to excessive rainfall or glacial meltwater. So that is going to cause serious challenges along the way, which will cause delays and sometimes make it difficult to reach your end of the day planned campsite. So weather again, you need to make sure that all your camping gears are dry, your sleeping bag, your extra clothes, your warm clothes in the night. Cannot take risk on that, so you need to put these in waterproof covers both during the day as well as in the night. Again, you need to be out of this wet, cold climate as the temperature drops in the night. Climate then, forget about the rains. Let's talk about climate more like from a temperature and sun point of view. You can see two guys there, right and left. Right, you're basically running, say, in a valley like Spiti, 4,000 meter exposed to intense sun. Very dry, very less vegetation, so you need to cover yourself properly to protect your skin against high altitude UV light. At the same time, when the weather gets bad, when you go at high altitudes again, especially across the passes, the weather changes fast. It can really become very cold and nasty in these places, and you need to immediately cover yourself with rain jackets to protect yourself from the cold, wetness, and the wind. Thank you for watching this first part. In the second part, we'll talk more about additional challenges, gears and planning, route. And then in the third part, we'll finish with the remaining items. Stay tuned. You can watch the entire series on ultrajourneys.org.